Greetings. Hello, good morning. I'm actually gonna adjust myself around a squeaky chair probably. I should probably switch it out, but here we are. I'm gonna adjust this up a little bit. That's fine. That's fine. Just move my hair out. Okay, hello, greetings. Okay, so today I am going to be reading from we're going to talk about denial, illusion, and biases in the sixth hub, and we've made it to page 233. So, okay, let's kind of collect our thoughts on this. So I actually scanned this, so like, oh my God. Okay. So the shadows of the sixth hub: denial, illusion, delusion, and bias. And if you're following along in the book, you will see that there's an extraordinary amount of real estate dedicated to exploring biases, which we'll do in the coming readings. I won't get through them today. I've organized them by hub. I've organized the cognitive biases by hub, and we'll talk through them. But for today, I'm going to focus on the component of the shadows, which are denial, illusion, and delusion. Okay. It's Sunday right now for me. I don't know when you're watching this, but it's Sunday morning, and I'm feeling very kind of like, So, yeah. You know, I think it's funny because I love hearing feedback, as I've discussed often. And if you have anything that you want to bring forward in this, I am I welcome it. I welcome the opportunity because, as we're kind of nearing the final stretch here, the final chapters, and spoiler alert, chapter 12, which is the manifestation, the conscious creation, which is going backwards through the hubs, through the funnel, and bringing something into reality. And it's developed. I developed it from having done it in very practical ways, like developing organizations that make hundreds of millions of dollars, and even writing this book. But what so as I'm practicing this along, I'm going to be doing that as I'm thinking about what comes next for Parinama. And I forgot what I was even saying. I mean, this is like, yeah. Hey, what are we? It'll probably resurface, but yeah. But I will say, I'm looking forward to doing that together. And I'm probably going to. I do know. I'm probably going to talk a little bit more about it in kind of like with people and social media and like that specific chapter, as I have not been. It's like one of the something I want to point out here is that everything at the beginning of the year that I'd been working on, as far as like these ideas and notions of like how to create awareness and market this and what is it, was that I didn't know what it was like I do now, having done it, just dedicated myself to reading this book and processing it and doing this for this year. I wrote the book. It's like I did it piecemeal, but to do it chronologically and to understand what it is a whole different thing. But so one of the things, like, what are these videos, and what are these lives? And it's really common actually, and if you're one of the people that has done this, like, back to, like, all feedback is totally welcome, um, and I'll respond to it one way or the other, is, like, one of the pieces of feedback I've been given is the low production value of all of my videos, not just these, but the others, um, whether it's, like, where I'm positioned in the camera, whether it's, like, where the camera's positioned relative to me, um, where my background. I mean, I'm just laughing because it's all totally justified. Um, yeah, but this is like what this is not. I'm not in a space of trying to convince anybody of anything right now, or ever. And this is like, so what this is like I'm communing with you, like I'm communing with myself, and as a result, and this is, I think of this as more like we're on a FaceTime and less like I'm on a like we're talking to each other. And so there's even something about it that I like, that is, like the angle's bad, so it really captures a double chin. You know, it's and I think there's something I really like in this where, um, like the idea that it's like I'm not making every possible effort to make myself more pretty. Like I'm not trying to like I think there's something about that personally I find comforting in terms of like almost like oddly interacting with myself, is that it's like I'm making an effort, but I'm not like I don't spend a lot of time like working on the camera angle and like what's it's gonna pick up and how I'm gonna look. Like sometimes I'll watch it and I'll be like, oh fuck that chin, maybe I'll do some gua sha. It's not working. It's not working. Don't buy it. Or maybe buy it and use it better or something. I don't know. But, like, yeah, I mean, I don't know, I think my double chin's kinda cute. It's a little bit signature at this point to me. Um, but but I do welcome still keep telling me that the production value is terrible. I welcome it. Don't stop. Don't stop. I mean, this is all stuff that could be, like, will likely become useful in whatever kind of the next iteration of this is as it shows up, you know? But yeah, I think it's like really it's a thing. It's a thing. Yeah, and also, like, one of the things that, is, like, I take a lot of, like, solace in is that there was a study. I wish I, like, had paid more attention when it came through. It just sort of, like, passed through my consciousness that showed that, like, people get angry when like, there's, like, sparks of, like, frustration and anger that people get when they're looking at somebody that, like, when they're not meeting, like, a woman that's, like, pandering to appearance standards. Very 6 by the way. Um, but anyway, I don't wanna, like, so if you are one of the many people, by the way, like, and it might feel like I'm talking to one person, I'm not. The observation is almost like very, very common. Please don't feel like I'm singling you out and, like, even telling you to stop saying the fact that, because it could be better, and at some point, I think it'll make sense for it to be better. Yeah, but for right now, um, there's this, and, yeah. Yeah, and it's the only part of what was originally the kind of like the ideas of like how I was putting Parinoma forward that's conserved. It's the only thing that is like still it's that had any sort of kite, like, that like any juice in it. Like everything else was like, yeah, this is just gonna fall away, so I'm not gonna invest in it. And I won't go into all the specifics, but it's to do with like um it has to do with promotion, and, like, the thing of the promotion of this being, Yeah, like promoting something I didn't know what it was, and I knew it was powerful. I knew it was potent, but there's so much. It's like every iteration with this, I learn more. I mean, before I wrote the book, I knew it was too potent for me to be teaching. Actually, this is for me to be like teaching without giving people the plays, like giving them the playbook, which was like it just I was like, this is it's almost like it's like we were doing one class, like one in-person class, and people were like kind of having these like, having really kind of, seismic shifts. Or I was like working with a person in one session, there'd be like a seismic shift as we are connecting a cognitive function with like the emotional component and the somatic part. And it was like, and then carrying that into life and being like, fuck, this just changed everything. Um, and, one of the things that did was that put this thing where it was like, I did something. It just kept being the narrative, which is like, instead of of this being like an inside job thing, it just once again externalized it, where it's like this idea that I had some kind of power. And that's the antithesis to this. This is really and truly about like reconnecting that division and finding these solutions in yourself. So then there was the writing of the book, which was like a response in that to give this as like you have all of it in your hands. So even in that, even as far as, one of the things I liked about it as a book was that it balanced the power more, where someone who I, would be working with or doing a class with or whatever could actually like be defensible in it, where it's like, I think this is one of the things where you see where, people who are like teachers and stuff are like kind of keep sort of like moving the goalposts around like their position on things. And it's like, and even putting it in writing. So it's like, you could call out and say, I actually think that that's bullshit. Versus it just being like, let me just sit and talk about it. So there's a proof point of that. So that was its own process. And in each of in each of these steps, there's been a level of revelation about what it actually is. And I think, when I think about the classes, I knew that I had the sense that I was playing with something that was more powerful, and it was ignorance, because there were things that would happen where I'd be like, oh, that's like really too strong. And that I didn't understand, like more of the kind of, I didn't really understand, so it was like kind of this thing. And then even with the book, like once the book existed, promoting it. I mean, I think about even a year ago where I was like, yeah, no, this is accessible to everyone. It is not. And I will say for people, it's so potent that people will read, and it's like very much like a signal in a sense that'll just tune into you. And whether it's for you, it's you, it's not, but it's like, it's not a light lift and it's disruptive. And I think that was one of the things that I was like not fully comprehending. I'm a really intense person, and I think and one of the limitations in my own comprehension is like tied in with that of understanding. It's like, oh, you don't want to get your in order to build self in order to build a self-actualized self, you don't want to obliterate yourself, no? Oh, weird. So anyway, so yeah, I mean, Paranormal for Beginners, and I'm gonna get into reading here. Paranormal for Beginners is really for anyone. Paranormal for Beginners is a standalone notion, which is there's tools and there's practices in that just that alone has created shifts for people that are really manageable and like fold really nicely into a household or life. It's really like great, like as far as that kind of like came through in terms of inspiration in its own way, like very similar to how the book came through. And I haven't felt inspired to do another session on it. It just hasn't arisen. And I'm starting to see kind of that's probably going to come through as like a beginning of the year thing. And maybe I'll just republish the ones on YouTube if people want to watch it or whatever. But anyway, it hasn't arisen yet. So this process is this process. Okay, and scene. I'm going to talk about the shadows, denial, illusion, and denial, illusion, delusion, and bias. And this is so one of the things that's kind of I noticed in just skimming this, and maybe I'll read it and like in the full read, it'll come through and it'll be a spoiler alert once again, where I just like talked over what was already written. But I want to like re-remind what a shadow is in a hub. And right now, like shadow work has like now like like has had like a surge where people it's like in the zeitgeist where people are talking about like work with the shadows, like work with the shadows. And it's like, and a lot of that is tied into like notions of like working with trauma and stuff. But here's the thing with all the shadows and this notion of like it's kind of like, well, so fear, right? So like we'll use fear as a good example, which is like the thing is like, well, you're supposed to like not be afraid, don't be afraid, no fear, no fear, like. And it's like, no, it's chronic versus acute. It's like the naturally organic like rising of a quality that is actually like life affirming, life saving, that happens in real time. And there's like a trust in ourselves when we're not as divided, of knowing that these things arise when they need to, like that our reflexes are like going to be able to like bounce us out in front from a physical threat. And in some ways, like the over preparation of chronic fear is going to actually degrade our nervous system, so we're less sharp in the event it happens. But the thing is, like the chronic aspect of a shadow fear is life taking, where the actual naturally organic arising shadow is life-saving, life-giving, but it's a shot of adrenaline into the system. Shame, very much, we've gone through all these. But anyway, but I guess the point I'm like taking a long time to get to is that a shadow is functional in acute, like as acute, like it's cute. It's cute. It's cute when it's acute. That gets a gong. Yeah. Pay no heed to that. Okay, so the thing is, there's a functionalness of delusion, illusion, and delusion. Denial, illusion, and delusion. It feels like yeah. It feels like just like blah, blah. So denial, illusion, delusion. Okay, so what am I talking about here in terms of like the use of these things? And this is where it's a survival mechanism. So it's being able to use a perspective. It's being able to create the notion that things are better than they are to survive things that are overwhelming and overloading, and especially for a developing nervous system. The idea that there should be this like incredibly well-constructed, long-term minded adaptation that's constructed, that considers that, having delusions when you're an adult is going to be bad for you. It's like, it's very in the moment in terms of believing something about yourself, believing something about your circumstances, your situation, denial, like not seeing something. It's all kind of sides of so it's kind of like, I mean, maybe, denial is like, denial is, illusion is like creating an alternate, delusion. I don't know, at some point I knew what all these things were. And then we'll talk about bias in a separate session. But the thing is, so an example I'll use just personally is that, um, the state of my own family had been so difficult for me to like, so both of my parents, I don't wanna give too much because I don't wanna, like, get in the way of, like, like, one's own consideration of this of their situation. But I'll just say, like, the thing is, like, my family, like, as a young person and, like, and as a young person, like, unwinding, um, like, my own situation, like, when I was young, one of the things was that I created an alternate reality of who I was, and it was a shift on the existing person, but it was like there were things that I fantasized about, like having a loving family, being special, being very extra special, um, being more supported. And I won't, I'm actually not going to go. I don't know why I'm not going to go into the details. For whatever reason, it feels like if I say too much about this, it blocks the point. But okay, but so what I will say is, yeah, I just for whatever reason, it's like it's kind of like I don't know why that is. I don't have any shame about it, or do I? I don't know. Um, but part of the thing was unwinding it, and the difficulty of unwinding a like what I'll call like a functional delusion, which is that, it's like, okay, so, this idea that I've been trying to project that, I do have like a lot of familial support, that bolsters me and that gives me my confidence and whatever. Like that, unwinding that is really challenging because it's like the thing about a delusion is it puts you ahead of where you are. So it's almost like getting a demotion in order to land exactly where you are now. So it can be really painful to reconcile the reality and then build from there. So, so it's understandable why some people like never go through that process. I remember going through the process and being like, "Oh, fuck, I don't know that I have I didn't, uh, at the time, the foundation to be able to land back at, yeah, like where I was, because the delusion was better. I mean, the delusion version was better, but it just wasn't real, and it was holding me back from, because it's like I can't grow off of that. I couldn't grow off of that. So it was like I remember in my relationship at the time having to kind of be like, "Look, here's the thing about my life," And he, of course, was wonderful and was like, "Yeah, no, this is like I think it's amazing that," like and that was helpful. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'm being that helpful here, so I'm just gonna read. Let's see where we go. Yeah, I don't know if that was that good. So the shadows of the sixth hub are denial, illusion, delusion, and biases, which can be found in all types of behaviors and adaptations. So unlike imagination and vision, which also see things that don't exist, denial, illusion, delusion, and biases are fixed, lack dynamism, and can get mistaken and or lauded as so-called values or even integrity because of their inflexibility and defense against change. I feel like I like sort of went off on something that wasn't that good, so now I'm kind of like pooped out. So on the one hand, thin slicing, a term used by Malcolm Gladwell in Blink to describe rapid cognition and intuition, can be a superpower. On the other hand, there's always the risk of unknowingly granting entry to the cognitive bias shadow. So our subconscious takes on all sorts of information from our surrounding environment, the good, the ugly, and downright toxic. Because biases function from the subconscious, their force and influence exert power from below readily accessible self-awareness. Yeah, and so you could be like, what the hell is like bias have to do with a shadow that has some function? And this is once again about these things, it's just nuts, but it's like these belongings and these kind of shortcuts in terms of cognition. So like conservation of energy, belonging with the people that you're surrounded by and have no means of like being able to, separate yourself from safely, you know, like, shelter, food, like just basic stuff. Um, so there's a lot on biases in here, and I think that's kind of an interesting thing. One of the things about I don't know if this is gonna come through that well. I might kinda cut it. Yeah, I might not do it. Yeah, it's too complicated, and I don't have that much juice left. Yeah. Okay, so biases are like shortcuts. They are reflex level thinking efficiencies. We don't like unfamiliar things. They represent change. And they conflict with our deep desire for the comfort of things that fit into familiar patterns. Challenging an unconscious bias can raise a lot of intense charge because it can feel like a challenge to our sense of safety. So, becoming heatedly defensive about something that requires leaps of rationalization to make personal is usually a good indicator that biases could be involved. Good example of this is like when someone is like, "Well, my tax dollars shouldn't pay for somebody else's yada yada." You know what I mean? Like that thing where it's like this is actually, someone's, like the fact that it's like that level of like somebody's like pain, it's like that kind of nutty stuff, you know, where it's like taking offense to something, being like, yeah, well, I like no. Okay. Also, getting intensely fixated and fearful can signal that we're dealing with bias. So, Resmaa Menakem's work is uniquely positioned to support the process of examining the depths of racial bias along with highly effective somatic practices. This book is fantastic, recommending My Grandmother's Hands. Um, Racialized Trauma and the Pathway to Mending Our Hearts and Bodies. This is a fantastic book in terms of really like what I would say as far as like this type of methodology, which is linking cognition, emotion, and somatic and reflex, and so it's like contextualizing it. There's practical exercises and there's actual work. So, one of the things I think with a lot of, like academic stuff that has to do with bias and is specifically in this racism is that it's always like someone else. It's like it's somebody else has this, I'm reading about the bad people and I'm one of the good ones. And that's like part of this like division that exists. And so the thing is, like, if something remains, like, purely cognitive, it's, like, held at a distance in a sense, whereas, like, when it comes into the somatic practices, it begins to integrate, like, that division is, like, mending. So it's really great. It's really great. This is a book, I consider this, like, canon for Parinama. When I read this book, I was like, there's certain books I buy, and as soon as I read it, I just want everybody to have it. This was one of them, and I only gave it to white people, trust me. Black people do not need this. I mean, they love it, or no, it's so fucking awful. People have told me that they love it, but I'm not in the business of teaching anybody who is Black about anything that's to do with race. So this is a callback to chapter 7, fourth hub. Yeah. All right. So when biases get reinforced by remaining unseen and unexamined, for example, so-called culture fits in companies, a huge point I've talked about in interviews before. I hate it. The thing is like, they're not a culture fit. I don't even know if that's happening now. I'm kind of out of the loop, but I imagine it is. Um, yeah, I did a lot of stuff about, like, doing, like, conscious, like, rubrics, which is, like, you need to evaluate somebody, like, for the notion of culture fit, and I remember catching a lot of really interesting stuff. One very memorable one about ageism, um, which is, like, these are the cultural values that need to be applied for any single candidate. So, anyway, that's not for this discussion. Um So intuition in the sense we get about a person can be a dangerously dehumanizing disguise for expressing prejudices. And like here's the thing, like the inside out thing is that it's like knowing so much about other people when it's like coming into let's talk about parinama, it's like when so much of ourself is a mystery. It's like it's like turning the interest inward to, where it's like, oh, that's so selfish. It's um like, that's a great way to keep people unconscious because it's like the thing about, it's like looking outward and making sense of the world when it's like there's all this, like there's the matter at hand, which is our own actualization, which really opens up the lens as far as being able to see other people with, um, I don't know. Like, it's just to be able I'm just gonna say see other people. I'm gonna leave it at that. So, okay, if we cannot define a workplace culture, apparently this was I couldn't let I was like a dog on a bone with this. It will be a danger zone. Oh, well, it's true. If we cannot define a workplace culture, it will be a danger zone of racism, ageism, and sexism, along with any other homogenous standard that a company subconsciously maintains through rationalization. Which are all those things. I mean, honestly, it's like I've yet to work in a company as a consultant or as an executive or full-time employee or whatever, where that's not just like surging through the circulatory system pumped into the air because it's part of our culture. It's not, it's just these become like temples to these notions. So using clearly defined principles for what it means to be a so-called culture fit requires greater thinking about what makes someone a good or bad fit and can help eliminate blind spots. I feel like, honestly, I'm reading this and I'm like, why did that take up so much real estate here? There's so many better things to talk about that are like, that's just me. I mean, that's just me in there having something to say that, you know what I mean? It's like to me, I read that and it's like the equivalent of somebody interjecting something into a conversation that they feel like is really cool that is like not super related. So there's that. There's that. So that's in there. We must grapple with paradox and ambiguity when we go deeper into our self-awareness and understanding of others. The more we know, the more we realize how fundamentally impossible it is to be certain about almost anything except change. It's constant and there is always new information to learn. Yeah, and also I guess one of the things to point out is that it's like in terms of the creation of the book is that there were things that would like sort of kind of like come through like downloads and it would be like where does this go. That's not one of them, by the way. That's just old. That's like an old chestnut getting rolled out to the old show pony that's a little long in the tooth getting rolled out because that's like one of my if you know me professionally, it's like one of those things where it's like, well, put on the tape. She's I'm gonna go out and get a drink. You can listen. I'm gonna go get a glass of water. You can listen to this old kind of thing. I have like it's calcified sort of talk track that's righteous. How fun. How fun for all the listeners. Yeah, hire me. Hire me as your consultant. I'll just tell you all the same shit. In in yeah, whatever. Yeah, but you okay, so enough making fun of that. It's funny though. Okay. So we're gonna talk like right. So that's like that's all she wrote, literally, on this. Next is cognitive biases organized by a hub. I think one of the things that I see in here is that I was very tuned in. Like at this point, in writing this, my fixation, like, I was very like, the notion of biases was very, like, as it relates to intuition and and even these things about, how this function in us works is, like, what we see in our perception and our beliefs, and that the shadow, it's, like, very common that denial, illusion, delusion are considered, when you think about, like, the 6th chakra, that's what you're gonna get. But the biases part of it was like, yeah, this needs some conscious evaluation because this thing where it's like, here, just learn how to tap into your, knowingness. It's like, yes, and yes, and it's like, it's been programmed within the context that of everything that we're talking about, like the cultural sort of, implications of all the things that have that continue to create division within ourselves. So that division is programmed as ideas as well. That's really well put, actually. I think that, yeah, I feel like that's really well put enough that redeems me for that dumb paragraph about culture and companies. I need to let it go. I need to let it go. It's like, but okay, but yeah, so there's that. And so one of the things I think that's interesting in here is that so the thing where unlike imagination and vision, which also see things that don't exist, denial, illusion, and delusion and bias are fixed. They lack dynamism and can get mistaken. So the fixed and lack dynamism, a lot of what I kind of view in terms of it's like instead of like healthy, all these words that are like good, bad, healthy, all this that don't really carry with them descriptors are um it's really more along the lines of like, I think back to, I don't know, if you remember from biology class, like there's kind of this notion that's like, what's a biological organism? It's like, it's like, oh, that's, part of biology, and it'd be like, well, is a rock a part of biology or what? I mean, yeah, all that stuff, right? Just like entry level biology. But like the thing about, I think some of the like really important reminders of like the characteristic of something that is a biological organism is like, first of all, that it responds to stimulation. Like, so it's like being activated. Like, this is just part of like kind of the thing. And we're just learning to become um more regulated in that, you know um but it's like growing, adapting, and being able to homeostatically regulate one itself. And so anything that has a fixed quality in the face of change, and it's really not unusual to like want things to be able to be that, like to have this craving for things that don't change, that ever enduring. And it's like there are things that are like enduring, but that like even their nature changes because of what's feeling them is changing. But the thing about an illusion or delusion is to just never, even with new information doesn't respond to it. If anything, it like fortifies it. It's like, so an illusion is just like, it can't adapt. It can't become a new notion of something. Yeah. So it's kind of like, yeah. 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 And, yeah. Mm, I think it's a good place to land here. Yeah. Do you want me to read the part again about the culture fit in a company? Oh, hi, Kristen. I just saw your hand. Wait, I have to wave back. Where's the little, I love these like weird. Hi, Kristen. Hi. 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 Yeah, I could read that part again about culture fit. It's so weird. It is so funny. It is like it's almost like it's like I have this smart thing to say. I need to find a place to put it. It's really yeah, it really is. It's really funny. Maybe it's like it's literally like maybe, honestly, the thing that's sort of funny, that might be kind of meta, which is like it really is kind of a example of something that I don't know how dynamic I've been in my thinking on this because there are interviews that are in like written interviews about that I've talked about this and the position is a completely unchanged. Not that I think it really but I do think it's funny. I added nothing to it, like, when I put it in here to my old chestnut. So that's, so that, like, I think if anything represents this thing where it's like this fixed idea that doesn't evolve as new notions and even what that means, it's kind of like even like the evolution could be like having more constructive ideas about like how to approach it. Whatever, but yeah, okay. I think I think that's it for now. But yeah, I mean, one of the things about illusion and delusion is like sometimes our illusions and delusions wind up kind of coming true in a very weird way, and I think that, um, you know, yeah, I don't know. I think like one of the things is that I guess maybe as a kind of closing point on this is that like fixed like fixations on notions of ourselves like are protective, and so part of what happens in this hub when we're processing it and doing the work is that there's a falling away of is like as referenced earlier, is can be really painful because it's like it's like putting oneself in a better position than we're in, and to kind of be able to talk like sort of create sort of a like a buffer and a comfort is the idea that this isn't so bad, or even attributing traits to people who don't have them is a very common one. you know um making believing that people are being like caring and loving who are not exhibiting those behaviors, but the notion of not being loved and cared for by people being too disturbing a notion. And so the unwinding of that is, like I think the difficulty is like in much of this, the thing where it's like, it's like that plot of land that has the little house on it that's serviceable, but you're knocking it down to build your dream house. And it's like you're knocking that little shack down, and there's a period of time where you're exposed to elements, like however brief that might be or however long it might be. And that kind of thing is something that happens here, which is like having to sort of see this sort of starkness of what the reality is as a place to grow from, as a place to build from. Yeah, because it's like a stuckness, like the thing about like maintaining an illusion, like, I'll call it like a survival illusion, is there's a stuckness with it because it's like operating outside of a reality anyone else can draft into. And also you can't build on it because it's not a foundation, it's not real. So there's that problem. So it's like, well, so in order to sort of like maintain it, it's like, so that's like kind of the upside of going through the process, is that there's more of an ability to be able to there is an ability to build infinitely in all directions by letting the stuff go. Yeah. Yeah. Because it is a holding on to. It's a holding on. And the thing is, there's a lot of like very like, I mean, this is kind of the whole like, one of the big things is that it's like, instead of, like, looking, it's like, I can't look, I can't look. So you just have to hold it forever. So it's kinda like, I don't know if that makes any sense, but anyway, that is it for me. I think the next will be cognitive biases. I'm probably gonna do this in a couple installments because it's pretty, like, it's like getting into it. Yeah, and I don't even consider myself to be, like, super well educated on biases. Yeah, but there's a lot in here. So I don't know how this is gonna happen. I'm just gonna read through it and see what comes up. God, see, these are the ones that would be so great to have as a discussion. Like, that's my dream with this that I keep talking about. I can't wait till this is more of a discussion. But there's like 2.5 pages of biases, and then there's a page of tips for critical thinking. So yeah, we'll get there. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So any comments I'll respond to. I appreciate any interaction. For folks who are reaching out to me on different channels, it's totally cool. If you don't have, if you don't know me directly, personally, writing to me on like direct messaging me on the Parinama Method Instagram. I will respond to you. If there's stuff you don't want to put out here on the comments in the chat, that is fine. It's very helpful, ultimately, to put thoughts and comments in here, because then other people can potentially relate and connect to them. But it doesn't really, the thing that really matters is your own process in this. So anyhow, all right. So that is it. I am so appreciative and looking forward. Hopefully you enjoy your day, or whatever time it is that you're watching this day. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.